I'm Hayne from WA Integrated Asset Management. Today I'll be talking to you about the three professions involved in asset management in local government. I know that you will probably focus on only one of those, but it's good to understand all of them. The three professions are technical, also known as engineering, finance, and information technology. The reason you need to understand all of these professions is that the real value of asset management in local government comes when all of these three professions work together to achieve integrated asset management. Let's look now in detail at the technical or engineering part. If you are a technical or engineering person, your focus will be on the physical asset performance and the level of service that that asset provides. You will know how to improve asset performance, and you will know how to do demand management of the asset. Of course, you will interact with finance. You will provide finance with information about asset consumptions and how much assets cost. If we had to look at your technical skills in detail, you would know things like why assets take as long as they do to construct and why they cost as much as they do, what maintenance assets require, how to cope with donated assets. You will have the kind of detailed knowledge about these things that finance simply has to take your word for it. You will know what services are provided by the assets. You will know that assets are not there for their own sake, but to provide services. And you will be in a position to assist with cost-effective solutions, non-asset solutions to provide services. You will know things like, can you reduce demand on these assets? Performance of assets and consumption of assets is a technical issue. It's affected by the maintenance that is applied to that asset. And remember that condition is the basic factor to determine remaining life and hence the depreciation of the asset. And the finance people need to know the depreciation of the asset, but they depend on you because you understand the condition of the asset. These are the sorts of skills you will have if you specialize in the technical or engineering area. Let's have a look now at the financial aspect. If you are a finance person, your focus will be on financial reporting and sustainability reporting. You will be involved in financial planning and possibly treasury management. Of course, you will interact with technical or engineering people. You will provide them with the funding that they need to renew, extend, and operate their assets. And you will rely on technical and engineering people for information about consumptions and costings of the assets. If we had to describe your skills in detail, you are there to demonstrate that other people's money is being used effectively. And you are there to protect other people's financial well-being, in the case of local governments, against rates shocks. An accounting person reports financial value to stakeholders. It will be your job to comply with Australian accounting standards. Now realize this, in the private sector with public companies, there are shareholders. They have a choice. They buy shares of the company, and Australian accounting standards protect them by requiring financial information to be reported in a certain manner. But in the public sector, the equivalent of a shareholder has no choice about being a stakeholder in the entity. So it's even more important in local governments to do proper financial reporting and to protect people's financial well-being. Let me say a special word about accrual accounting. And here I would recommend an AIFMG course by the RPWEA. I've been on one of them and really enjoyed it, really benefited from it. But what accrual accounting does is it deals with assets with long lives. And what it does is it takes the depreciation of those assets and it includes it in the expense as a below-the-line item. So when you deal with the income and expense statement, your entity will be sustainable if there is a net positive result, bearing in mind that you've included the depreciation as an expense below the line. Now, obviously, for this to work, you need fair value reporting and not historic costs. And you'll remember that Western Australia made that transition some time ago. Another interesting thing from a financial perspective is the revaluation and reinspection cycle of the assets. Now, please get proper advice from your auditors, but I'm going to summarize it. The revaluation and reinspection cycle is determined by accounting, materiality, and the inflation rate. For example, the accounting standards usually mention 10% as a materiality value. When you have a low inflation rate, like Australia does, less than 3%, in 3 years you would have possibly a 9% impact if the inflation rate was 3%. So if you have a reinspection cycle every 3 years, you will stay below the 10% materiality factor. But revaluation occurs annually, where they take the asset stock as it is and apply new unit costs to it without going and doing a reinspection cycle and looking at the conditions. Let me say something else about current dollar values and indexation of dollar values. All the asset management plans have got current dollar values. If you publish your plan today and you look at the costs going forward through the years, they will be in today's dollar values. On the other hand, when you look at council budgets that are predicted to be collected from rates in future years, those will be indexed amounts. They will be actual dollars that are collected in future years. So you need some kind of adjustment to be able to relate the asset management plan to the future budgets. Now, the long-term financial plan, on the other hand, can be written either in current dollar values or indexed values. So you need to know what you are dealing with when it comes to indexation. Just bear that in mind. When it comes to the Department of Local Government Community reporting ratios, bear in mind that their concern is that the local government will be financially viable in the long term. They will be interested in knowing that the future asset needs will be met by future budgets. To ensure that, they have a requirement for a 10-year long-term financial plan. 10 years is the modelling period they require for the financial plan. In order to support that, the asset management plan actually has 20 years of financial modelling. And the reason for that is you simply want to know that there isn't a spike of expenditure coming just after the 10 years that looks as if it might be manageable. Let's look at the information technology part. If you are in information technology, your role will be to provide systems for finance and technical or engineering people. You will maintain the repositories of evidence-based information, and you will deal with a large scale of information and calculations that modern asset management requires. The maths in asset management is actually very, very easy. It was invented by the ancient Greeks in about 300 BC or something. But the large scale means that we need systems to help us. You will be involved in data management, and you will provide other smarts, for example, assist with field collection of assets using iPads or GIS integration. You will also assist in data needs of other parties. For example, in Western Australia, the Main Roads Department needs IRIS information. There's an annual IRIS upload. And you will help with input into other systems, for example, the NAMS Plus template, which takes asset information and models that to give outputs for the NAMS Plus toolset. Your responsibilities will include monitoring privacy policies and jurisdictions. For example, cloud-based systems sometimes don't take local government privacy policies into account. You will be concerned with things like access privileges for users so that people can't modify systems, and protection against hackers, and maintaining audit trails so that people can find out, if necessary, what happened to the system. I want to just say one thing about who owns the system, whether it's the technical department or the finance department. I have experience in using the SPM system, which goes to an engineering level of detail. Finance often doesn't need that level of detail, so the engineering level of detail is often rolled up to cater to finance's needs. On the other hand, if finance owns the system, you might find that it can't accommodate detail that is fine-grained enough for the engineering or the technical people. One of the reasons that the three professions need to cooperate is that the real value of asset management in local government comes from integrated asset management, where you get the kind of information that assists you in decision making, the kind of information that gives you a clear picture of your asset stock and shows you the cost implications of continuing with your assets, changing them, or expanding them. The kind of information that gives you insights for improvements. Asset management is more valuable when it becomes an upstream activity in the organization. So if you can give feedback to your planning department, for example, in demand management and in life cycle costs, it improves the entire organization. Just as an example, if you wanted to do demand management on your stormwater network, and you realized that you could do that by putting buffer boxes on the down pipes of houses, and you gave that as an input to the planning department so that they made it part of the planning approvals, you could impact the way the assets work in your organization. An integrated asset management strategy is holistic and very valuable. Let me just give you an example of that. I was once working with a local government, and they had a variety of asset management plans, and one of these was the footpath plan. And we were having a conversation about what the strategy should be for the footpath plan. And I asked the question, why not rather consider something like a holistic asset management strategy? For example, create a new land division, an industrial land division, which will boost council revenue, and bearing that in mind, decide what your footpath strategy should be to support that. So now you can see, when you start taking that view, you are now pursuing organizational goals. You are in the realms of strategic asset management. Integrated asset management gives you a service perspective where you are providing services and you realize that those services are supported by assets. Integrated asset management supports strategic community plan requirements as well. There is real value in integrated asset management. One of the dangers of asset management in any organization is that you can go to a lot of effort to collect data, and then you can find that it requires a lot of hard work to keep it up. And if you're not getting value from it, you can find in a few years' time that you get this kind of sand castles on the beach effect, where there is some evidence that there was some activity, but it's not totally obvious what the shape was because of the erosion of time that has happened since the work was done. Integrated asset management defends you against that, where you get real value out of it for your organization. Thanks very much for joining me. We've been looking at the 3 professions in asset management in local government and how these professions support each other. Each of these professions have reasons for doing things the way they do. They might have legal obligations, professional obligations. And what they do is essential for local government and for asset management in local government. And when they work together and deliver the benefits of integrated asset management, then you get real value. Thanks again for joining me, and please look out for other videos on this channel.